go. You're ready to go.
Okay, hey everybody. Hope you all did well on the quiz. So we're going to get started. A lot happened this week, of course. But we're going to start off with a fun quiz that maybe you can get bonus points. I don't know. It's going to be called Real or Fake News. First one. Last Friday, 10/27, Alphabet joins Apple in the $700 billion market capitalization club in a fraction of the time as Apple. Who wants to take that on?
People.
Alan, anybody?
I'm going to say yes, just because Alphabet is younger than Apple by many years.
That is true. Google did it in 13 years. Apple did it in 30 years. So that's pretty significant. And on Friday, they ended up closing at 1,036. They gained 4.4% that day during that news. Number two. Last Friday, 10/27, NASDAQ booked the biggest blowout victory in terms of percent rise against the Dow in 15 years.
Fifty shot, I'm saying yes.
Good, you did. That's correct. NASDAQ closed with a high 2.2%, and Dow had a 0.1% rise. Largest since September 24th, 2002. Next one. The recent $130 billion of damage in recent Texas and Florida hurricanes had a large negative effect on the GDP. Say again?
Is that one false?
What was that, sorry?
Is that one false?
Yeah, it's my guess that false as well.
Yeah, correct. It actually only reduced the national GDP by a few tenths of a percentage point. So it's kind of surprising. I know we were looking at some other natural disasters in other past weeks, so it kind of fits the trend. Next one.
What's our GDP, right?
Yeah. Google is paying Apple billions of dollars to remain the default search engine on iOS.
Fake.
It's actually true.
That's gotta be.
It's true. Citing court documents, they paid Apple $1 billion in 2014, and it's expected to triple in 2017 to $3 billion. And it's basically just full profit, which I read that it can account possibly for 5% of iPhone's total operating profit this year. So that's kind of crazy numbers. All right, last one. NFL anthem protests have helped Papa John's stock value.
Fake. It's decreased.
False.
Yeah, you guys are right. Actually, the CEO has been blaming it on his recent net worth dropped $70 million in less than 24 hours after their earnings. So,
Tough life.
not a good day for that guy. And actually, I read that DirecTV has let some of the customers cancel their subscriptions using that as a reason. So I thought that was very current events for DirecTV. All right, congrats. You got some bonus points. All right, so
I could wait for Papa John to spin that in some sort of a marketing campaign.
yeah, it's not looking good. So obviously a lot happened this past week.
Bill, are you gonna,
Go ahead.
given everybody got all these bonus points, are you going to do the grading for me?
I don't know. It depends how many bonus points I'll get. All right. So obviously a lot happened this week. A lot of earnings reports, Fed share, tax plan, still to come as well. Some stories that we've been following, some new. So let's dive right into it. So Facebook, Wednesday, yesterday, they released their third quarter earnings. Obviously, they've been doing well. They earned 10.3 billion in revenue and 1.5 actual, compared to estimates of 9.84 billion and 1.28 earnings per share. And that's been up year over year, as you can see, 76%. Profitability has increased as well year over year, and same as the daily and monthly active users. So I wanted to ask you guys if Facebook is here to stay. Clearly, that's been a trend. And if you actively still use it, personally, I've had a lot of friends that started just dropping off with all the political drama and just spam and videos that have been on there lately.
This is Micah. I personally don't use Facebook at all. I don't even have the app on my phone. I still have an account, but I don't even use it. I've talked to a lot of people that occasionally do, but I feel like Instagram is becoming the new wave of kind of our generation. Facebook is kind of becoming the old person's version of social media, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but it's just, everybody's on it. Now, with that, I feel like that Facebook continues to show it because there's still people getting on it. However, I feel like it's a little bit of a bubble, and at some point it's going to kind of fall on its face, kind of like MySpace did.
Agreed. Alan?
As the old person, I use it, but not very much. I've hidden probably half the people on my feed that post because I don't care for either because they're either political or telling me about what their cat ate for breakfast, and I don't care. I probably use it more for party invites and coordinating events than for what's going on in other people's lives.
I would agree. The only thing I've used up in the past year, Bill, is to join your kickball team.
Yeah, I think that people are using Facebook just to lurk more than be active. Um, so Instagram has turned into my social media platform of choice. Lots of updates on things that you don't want to really see on Facebook. So, and when they change the way the timeline works, so you keep on seeing things that are trending, right? I'm tired of seeing what people's cats are doing. So. I can see Facebook kind of falling off at some point.
I'm going to say because I have a lot of family overseas, we use Facebook a lot, and especially with Messenger, how you can call internationally without, you know, getting in any having to pay for international calls and that kind of deal. So from my perspective, and I have a really big family, it seems like it's the big social media platform for internationally, versus I guess how we feel about it in the U.S.
And as the really old person in the group, uh, a lot of my friends only are on Facebook, so I check Facebook probably once or twice a day. once or twice a week, I guess. But because that's how I keep up with them. But I occasionally, very occasionally, will post a picture of my grandkids or something. But I use Instagram because I think when we joined Facebook, we were less discriminating about who we allowed to friend us. And so Instagram, I have a much more narrow group who I'm willing to share things with. And so I use that a whole lot more than I use Facebook. And I agree. Facebook is getting so ad heavy that it's harder. But it is the platform of choice for a lot of people still right now. Although for the most part, your generation is moving away from it.
I think you might need to increase your volume. It's hard to hear you. So I looked at their stock on Wednesday after the earnings and hit 182, obviously the highest at the end of the week. Tesla, one of my favorite things to follow. On Friday, they've had some production issues. I think we talked about that a little bit last week. In the third quarter, they expected 260 versus a target of 1,500 units. And that Friday, the shares declined that 1.62 percentage points. And I also saw there was a class action lawsuit on false and misleading statements based on that production. If that's going to really do anything, that's kind of up in the air, but I thought that was interesting. And then yesterday was their third quarter earnings report, and they expected was 2.9 billion and a loss of 2.45 per share. Oh yeah, so they were expecting a loss, and their actual revenue was 2.9 billion, so they meet that with even worse of a loss, $3.70 per share. And after that, of course, in the after market trading, they were down 4%. So it's not exactly looking good for them at this time. And you can see the spike before the earnings report, and then clearly drops right down. It's going to keep going up and down. I've seen stuff on there in the news or analysts saying that it might be good to invest. They think that the value is going to increase in the future, but especially in some of the manufacturing issues, Elon Musk is saying that they're going to fix some of the bottlenecks that they're facing. Whether or not that's going to happen or not, that's have to see what happens. And another one not doing so hot is Under Armour. They missed their quarterly earnings on Tuesday. They slashed some of their outlook. Their stock's been down more than 20%, fell 5% from a year ago. They're trying to say that there's a lower demand for shoes and athletic apparel, at least for them. They're also faced some supply chain issues with the new Curry 4 line of sneakers. And they have actually been growing internationally, but the markets are really too small to make a big difference for them. And you can see clearly had a drop after they missed the earnings. I guess what I wanted to ask you guys if retail, we've been talking a lot about retail. Do you think there's any hope in sight for some of these guys, or how can they stay competitive against each other? Chelsea?
Well, I was going to say, too, I heard that Under Armour is parting away with 2 of its execs. I think, and then by the end of the year, they're going to, I think they're vice president. I'm not going to say because I don't know, but 2 of their top execs are going to be leaving because they're struggling, obviously. But I guess, they're probably, just due to, the competition between now Adidas coming through and Nike, it's just more of, retail's just a competitive, what's the word? I don't even know. I can't even think after this exam. But it's just very competitive nowadays, so that's it.
funny too. Sorry. When I first moved to Maryland, is when I first started getting the hype of Under Armour, and I was looking at some of their stocks, and the PE ratio was something in like the low 100s. And I was talking to a good friend of mine who works for Fidelity, and he goes, "That's a pretty risky stock." And this is kind of before I was really kind of in tune with it. I just checked the PE ratio today is like 35.16, so it's dropped like threefold just in the course of the past year and a half. So it's pretty crazy to see kind of where it was almost a bubble of its own.
So now do you see why companies that your return is based on growth? That's why they're so much more volatile because, there's no guarantee. For a while there, Under Armour was the salvation for Baltimore. And now I was at a board meeting yesterday, and there's some real concerns going forward. Are you able to hear me better now? Yeah.
Okay, great. Another store we were talking about earlier is JCPenney. Last Friday, they slashed some of their profit forecast amid an effort to liquidate some of their not so popular products. And they also doing an effort to cut some internal costs, which we've talked about is just really a short-term solution. It's not something that's going to provide value in the future for investors. Based on that news on Friday, their stock plunged as much as 25%. And of course, they've been down year-to-date 56%. They plan on closing 138 stores, so clearly it's not looking good for them as well. Question to you guys, the PE multiple, as Mike had just talked about Under Armour, this is only a 9.7, which is pretty low, but it's also an opportunity potentially for investors to get in there now.
Interested in buying JCPenney? Keep in
Not
mind,
me.
typical is 18 right now. They're at 9.7. Yeah. Eric, I'm agreeing with you. Bill, you too. It's interesting. I noticed them on TV today with ads that looked very similar to previous years. They had this period where they stopped doing sales and it was value priced, and that was a miserable fail. So they look very much like the old JCPenney's again, which I thought was kind of interesting. The other thing to pay attention to is not only are people hyped up. I was in the stores today and I was shocked to see the people buying Christmas already. And mind you, I'm listening to Christmas music already. I love Christmas, so I'm buying too. But I usually have the aisles to myself at this point in the year, and that's not true. And the other one that I saw today is Home Depot had their first, I'm sure, Black Friday sale today. Okay, it's not Friday. It's a long time till Black Friday. So I think retail is going to be they're going to try to preempt the market. There's going to be great sales this year, and we're going to see a lot of them go out of business. It's just amazing to see the rush and the push and how quickly they pushed out Halloween and brought in Christmas and what they're already doing. I bet the ads are monstrous already this weekend because they're trying to get that market before anybody else gets it.
And clearly you can see the drop after they cut their forecast on Friday. And it's not looking good going forward. Apple, our favorite. So last Friday, pre-orders began and customers started receiving delays more than a month, which of course people freaked out about a little bit, but investors knew that's really not going to affect them too much. And of course you can see Monday, the shares hit an all-time high of $166.72 a share. And then Tuesday, after positive iPhone reviews, the shares hit another all-time high of $169.65 per share, which obviously is different than the Friday outlook. And then Thursday, as we all know today, she ordered 4 earnings release, which they killed it, least to say. Earnings per share was $2.07 versus forecasted $1.87. The revenue was $52.6 billion versus forecasted $50.7 billion. And the iPhone sales actuals were 46.7 million versus 46 million, so not too much more than iPhone sales, but they still pretty much hit it. And the iPhone 8s are actually their top selling at the moment. So again, they killed it. But one thing I saw from some of the analysts I was reading was that their services revenues have also grown 20% in the first 3 quarters. So their streaming music service. I wanted to ask you guys, do you use like Apple Music or Spotify or those kind of services, and do you think that's going to continue growing? It seems like there's more and more services out there. Do you see like Apple maybe purchasing one of those, or just kind of outfight any of those other smaller guys, being Apple? Eric?
I don't think streaming music would be as popular or as demanding as it is now in the future. You have Pandora and other streaming stations where you can get music for free. So I don't know. I'm just skeptical and paying for music online when I think of ultimately everything will be free.
Yeah, I agreed with that.
Eric and Bill, given that, what do you think about the model for, say, Sirius XM or any of those satellite radios? You think it's different for them?
Oh, I actually, 3 months came with my car when I bought it, and they've been calling me every month since it expired. So I don't know if that's just part of their techniques or they're struggling keeping users, which I'd imagine is probably the case with all these services out there. I just stream music off my phone in the car, which helps that I have a company phone, so I don't need to pay for the data. So that probably goes into the decision of some other consumers. Chelsea?
I just had a quick question. I noticed that Apple's reporting its Q4 earnings when a lot of other companies are reporting Q3. Is it common for them to have such a drastic calendar year of them doing their earnings reporting?
I'm not sure. I was actually wondering that myself. I thought maybe it was a typo for a second until I looked into it. Carol, can you comment on it?
They just have a different fiscal calendar than the year.
That's exactly right. So they must close on March 30th each year instead of December 31st. Good catch, guys. Good observation.
Rebecca?
Sorry, struggling. I was going to say that I have Apple Music, and for like a student membership, it was like $5. And for me, I really like it just because you can search whatever you want. It's right there, and it's all in like one icon on your phone. And since it's on like the main screen, you don't have to swipe through anything. I don't know if that matters, but for me, I don't know. I just feel like it makes the user experience pretty easy, and for being so cheap. So I can see how people may continue to do that. And I know that sometimes Apple Music, they do like specific like documentaries and stuff like that. So I like it.
Micah?
So I think, to her point, I think that there is going to be a place for that. Like, I personally, I have Spotify, which I love, and I think there's a few big ones that people just like bleed into, like Spotify or SoundCloud or whatever it is, plus Apple. It's similar to like the whole TV package. You can unbundle and do the Hulu thing, which now has live TV and sports. But I feel like some people just still want to be kind of all involved. Like, I still have Xfinity. I actually love X1. The profile or whatever. I don't mind it. I think there's going to be like a 50% of people that want to have that luxury feel of being able to pick and choose the music they want to listen to. I hate commercials. I hate just random music. I'd rather actually find a song and play all of the music that I want to hear. So it's a premium for me. I'm sure there's a lot of people that do wish to just unbundle or just log in on their computer to watch TV. Personally, I don't. So I think it just depends on the person. But I think there's going to be a place for it. I think that a lot of these music services are going to get swallowed by, like the ton of little ones are going to get swallowed by the big guys, and I think Apple will ultimately buy one and try to monopolize on it a little bit. And there isn't a ton of differentiators out there right now, but I'm sure somebody's going to come up with something similar to like the whole, Netflix coming up with their own content. So maybe they start their own record labels, etc. There's got to be a place for it, I think.
So maybe you guys can help me. I do have Sirius in the cars because we travel a lot. We drive a lot back and forth between Richmond, and it's nice not to have to deal with um, remembering my cord if I don't have it with right at hand. But I have the Amazon Music, and I've bought a lot of music, so I've got a lot of personal files as well. What's the difference between Apple Music and what I get with Amazon Music? So if I say, Alexa, play Christmas music from 1960, play for hours. So it seems to be a pretty comprehensive database. I don't have to pay anything extra for it beyond Prime. What's the difference between that and Apple? Why would I like Apple better?
I don't have either of those, so I'm probably the worst person to ask. Rebecca, what do you think about the Apple?
I was going to say, do you have an iPhone? I mean, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, that, then Apple makes a lot of things more seamless.
Well, I only use iPhone. And a lot of times when I buy music, what I've done over the years is I've bought CDs and then I download them, and I've almost always bought them from Amazon, but they go right into my Apple account too. So it doesn't feel non-seamless. It feels like I have access to a heck of a lot of music. I think Amazon says there's 2 million songs in there. So I'm not sure, Alan, what would feel.
You do have access to kind of the same music, I think. At the end of the day, though, the Amazon thing, you still have to pay a monthly subscription for unlimited of all. If you wanted to pick and choose one band and listen to all their songs, I think you're going to have to pay a premium for that, like some sort of subscription model. Or buy the actual album itself. With Spotify, you pick and choose a song anytime you want. It's the same thing with Apple Music if you're paying for, it's like a pay-to-play type thing. And I have Amazon Prime, but you have unlimited access to music, but I think it's going to be random, similar to what a Pandora without a premium account is like.
It is random. Okay, that's a differentiator. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry to interrupt. I was just curious. I am anxious to see where these music platforms go in the long term, and I also think they're going to be safe. We lost. Yeah, Mike wants to know what to do with his Apple stock. Does he hold, buy more, or sell? What do you guys think?
Depends if you have the money.
I say buy. Apple just I'm sorry, is that the static coming from me?
You and
No.
Micah were at the same time. So Eric, go ahead and go, and then Micah, you can pipe in next.
I was just going to say, quarter after quarter, Apple keeps exceeding analyst expectations. They have a long history of growth over the last 5 years. I mean, it's just been a outweight and overperforming stock in my portfolio. So, I mean, I would buy more if I had more money.
So I agree with Eric. I think that you have to be willing to sit on it for a little bit, because I think the first iPhone X is actually probably going to flop. I say that knowing that I actually pre-ordered it on Friday myself, so when I get it, I'll be the first to tell you if it sucks or if it's great. But it's the first prototype of a brand new model for them. They're changing the way they've done the phone. And I think that there's going to be issues, there's going to be glitches, there's going to be people that just don't know how to adapt to it because they're so used to the regular iPhone type. So I think with the iPhone X1 or 11 or whatever, they may, I just think it's going to keep going up, but it may take a slight dip to begin with. They're such a strong company, people believe in it so much, I don't see any reason why you'd want to not buy it if you have the money to do so.
point, I saw my son-in-law this weekend, and he just got the new Apple Watch, and he did because he's a runner, and he wanted the music feature so that he could listen to music with his headphones when he runs without having to have his phone with him, and that's not working properly yet. Uh, but it's his first Apple Watch, and he loves everything else about it. And they already have fixed a couple of glitches with it, and they're continuing on. So all the talk right now about the facial recognition and all the problems they're having um, with people being able to trick the facial recognition, they're going to resolve that pretty quickly. Mike, I'm with everybody else. I'm waiting for a dip. I'm going to buy the dip again. I love Apple. It's done really well over time. But man, when you started buying it when it was down in the 30s and it's at 170 something now, it's hard to buy. So the fundamentals are still good.
In their stock, they closed at $168 a share today. So another story we were following was CVS Health and Aetna. Friday, their shares were down after a story in the Washington Journal broke that they might be offering to buy Aetna for $66 billion or more, which analysts are saying is going to require a significant amount of debt, which could push their credit rating down into junk high yield. So they would be taking a risk in regards to that. And some analysts were saying that the deal won't even necessarily make the drugs cheaper, could even rise prices, which I had to look into a little bit further. Basically, it's because that insures fewer people than they can provide services to. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And if you look at their stock, past week, it's been dropping, a downward trend. So we'll have to see how the purchase plays out, if it happens. In Bitcoin, which I think it reached 7,000 already today, but on Wednesday it exceeded the $6,500 barrier, a new record. Hit 65.50.14, resulting in Bitcoin market capitalization of 109 billion. So whoever got in on that early on is sitting pretty at this point. But I think like we talked about, it's probably going to be a bubble eventually. Tax plan, the moment you've all been waiting for. So at 10:30 on Monday, stocks actually finished a little bit lower over doubts of the pace, and there was some rumbling that they were considering phasing it in instead of immediately, which is probably, I think, still the case. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. And then you see that some of the bigger markets shed some points, nothing too crazy, but healthcare sector it took a hit as well. And Tuesday, it ended up being delayed to Thursday, but they confirmed that they were going to preserve the top rate of 39.6% for the rich of the rich. And this was on Wednesday when I made this, so the plan was dropping. They were still planning on dropping the corporate exit 20%. And then from today's news, it was a 1.5 trillion plan to cut taxes, and they're saying it's supposed to save a typical family $1,182 per year. Whether or not that is true, they aim to turn into law before the end of December. Again, we'll see if that happens. The pace hasn't been too great so far. Does anyone know of any of the controversial parts of this plan? Anyone read into it at all today? Alan?
My screen froze, so hopefully you can hear me. So one thing I read about was that the foreign investments or foreign cash would be taxed at a rate of 12%. So Apple's not going to be able to just sit on such a large stockpile anymore, nor will a lot of other tech companies that have their money offshore or pharmaceutical companies who've also tried, rehomed to countries like Ireland to try to get lower taxes.
There's a couple other things that was controversial. They were planning on capping the mortgage interest deduction at $500,000, which some of the analysts are saying that it could create a recession in the housing market. Basically, it'll limit the home buyer's ability to use the interest deduction, and home values may or may not fall. If a home seller takes a loss, that's the money, some of the money they were counting on for retirement. So that is a big deal for some of the people. It also is supposed to limit property taxes and cap at $10,000, and they're planning on eliminating the medical expense deduction, which obviously affects probably a lot of families that spend money on healthcare, which is several people. Anybody know anything else?
There was a state, right, that I think they were reducing deductions for city and state. Is that right, Bill?
Yeah, I think that was the 10,000 to capping at.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Just a couple other small things. They're planning on phasing out the estate tax over 6 years. 401k is supposed to stay the same. And as Alan said, they're proposing a global minimum 10% tax rate, which hopefully brings them back here. Oh, brings some money back here, rather. Alan, did you have anything else? Alan, your hand's up.
Sorry, I clicked the mute instead of unmute. They're actually going to get rid of the tax deduction for paying alimony. So, that's certainly, I mean, you wonder why, but it's a tool that, divorce lawyers can maybe get somebody to agree to in order to pay more alimony. And, well, it won't affect a lot of people. It's certainly just one of those many factors. I'm waiting to see how big this bill actually is and all the details.
Same. And then I just checked the the Dow and SP 500 and Nasdaq, and it's nothing too crazy, just some up and down. Probably just taking some time to digest it, but we'll have to see how the markets react, especially if it does come into play in December. Fed chair, another top story. Through the entire week, they're pretty much expecting Jerome Powell as his nomination, which of course happened, which a lot of people are saying it's going to be all more of the same compared to the previous. So Wednesday, the day before, they were planning on leaving the key interest rates unchanged. So, did anyone hear anything in regard to Jerome Powell's back history? Any worries about him being the next Fed chair?
I mean, he was a Republican, and Yellen was a holdover, so that's why she was not chosen. But from what I read, he lined up with her quite a lot. So hopefully things won't be too different. He's the first one I think, that does not have a doctorate in economics or something.
Yeah, I think he's a lawyer, right? I believe. He used to be the head of one of the investment banks, I believe, too.
Yeah, I think all
but I guess one of the
similar to Janet Yellen.
I guess one thing that was kind of big, or not big, was the fact that previously a lot of the Fed chairs were reappointed, but Trump does things his own way, so he brought Jerome Powell into play. And then this just shows, over time, just been gradually increasing, and it's probably going to stay between those two. So some of the just like recent current events that's been in the news, the indictments, FBI indictments on Monday, the New York City act of terror on Tuesday, Wednesday about keeping the rate unchanged. With all these news going on, it's still surprising that, well, more so the FBI and the act of terror, the fact that people still believe that the future is great, and all these earnings, which again below you'll see 94% tech stocks have been beating analyst expectations. So the market is good. The treasury yield, the bonds just fell a little bit, nothing too crazy. S&P 500 and Dow both logged 7 straight months of gains. Longest streak for Dow since April 12 and May 2013 for the S&P. So even with some of this political crazy climate going on in terror and hurricanes and all that other kind of stuff, the market is still staying strong. And you'll see NASDAQ, staying increasing. Tuesday, 1031, it finished at 6,727 points. 60-second record close of 2017, matching a record set 37 years ago. So that's interesting. And you can see, like I said, in some of these events like Monday, the indictments, and Tuesday with the terror, hasn't really made anything go down or anything turn crazy. It's still an upward trend. And you see that Wednesday, Dow Jones was up 120 points after setting a fresh intraday. Which today closed at 23,514 points. And you can see the same trend with S&P 500, which closed at 2,579 points. Just some quick international news I followed. For France, 1031 on Monday, I believe, or Tuesday, GDP rose 0.5% third quarter, an annual rate of 2.2%, which I guess is big for them because it's the highest figure since 2011. And I know Macron's had a lot of economic program and efforts to get that moving, which is suggesting from analysts that the recovery remains on track from them since some of the struggles they've had in 2008. UK, London could lose 75,000 financial services job after they leave in the European Union in 2019. And policy makers expect to increase borrowing costs by 0.25 basis points or 0.5% when they meet on Thursday, which is big because it's the first rate hike in more than a decade for UK. And another big story that we've been following is the Spain, Catalonia. Friday, the Catalan Parliament voted to declare independence, but the Spanish government quickly dissolved it and called for elections to replace it later in December. And I saw this kind of cool little diagram online that shows how much can happen in a country within 1 month. October 1st was the independence referendum, strikes 3rd, and then now at the end of the month they've declared independence. But luckily they've both agreed to hold elections in December. So hopefully that kind of diverted some violence or something that could have went bad. And just some things looking at in the future. Earnings announcements, which was today. Alibaba, which I tried to look at before the exam and I was unsuccessful. I think there's a time difference after the market closes. Starbucks and Apple, we talked about. JCPenney is later next week. Did anyone see Starbucks earning announcements? or Alibaba?
Starbucks was down. They've decided to sell off one of their tea brands. And what was the other headline? Oh, and that they're not doing so well in Asia.
No news around the the seasonal cups. I know every year in the winter they get something bad press for their cups. I don't think I've seen anything on that yet. So, but we'll keep an eye out for that. Unemployment rate is supposed to be released for October this Friday, so we'll be on the lookout for that. The international trade level for September results are also on Friday. The trade deficit is expected to increase as exports are rising and imports are falling. Rebecca, did you have something?
So I was looking at Alibaba earlier, and I think their earnings did well. So I believe their stock is going up. But it was interesting because they're trying to capture the Southeast Asia market, and they're competing with Amazon there, and it seems like they're actually going to do better than Amazon is. So I thought that was interesting.
Cool. And the consumer credit report for September is releasing on next Tuesday. But I guess a lot of the financial gurus don't really pay too much attention to it since it has such a long lag in between. The Fed Chair Conference, the 13th and 12th to 13th of December, and the Catalan elections kind of went over and end of December. That's it, guys. Thank you. You guys have any other questions?
Good job.
Nicely done, Bill. That was a lot of good content. Okay, turn off your mic now because that's where I'm echoing through that. I think everybody's hearing the echo. Hold on, sorry. I'm back up in volume again. One thing, the comment on Alibaba made me remember. I was at a meeting yesterday, and there was some internet guru who they were quoting, and he was saying that by 2023, so what's that, 6 years from now, 70% of all merchandise sold online will come from 4 retailers. Any idea what the 4 might be? Or from 4 websites. Any idea what the 4 might be?
Amazon.
Amazon's one.
eBay.
eBay's one. Yep. 2 of them.
The China eBay.
Hold on, Grace, say it again.
Or the China version of Amazon.
That's Alibaba. Yep, that's the 3rd one. And the 4th one,
Say
it again, Mike. Do you know the 4th one?
An Indian version of Amazon?
No, it's not. Good guess. But it's not. It's Jet.com, and that's the company that Walmart bought. And so if you think about Walmart and the way they're trying to grow, Lord and Taylor, Jet, all their other little brands that they've been acquiring, that's supposed to be the other one. So when you start to think about all these other companies, they're going to have to merge or decide or go out of business or decide not to be much of a retail presence, if indeed this is holding true. But he's looking at regressions and running the numbers compared to where things are now, and that's the direction they're seeing things go. That's a lot of consolidation in just a few industries. I also noticed with interest today that the Justice Department is considering antitrust against AT&T because of their acquisition of the Time Warner, I think. That they're viewing as anti-competitive. Once the Justice Department starts jumping forward with these kinds of attempts to break up some companies, Amazon won't be far behind. Although typically antitrust stuff doesn't happen during Republican administrations, but this is such an atypical administration that it's hard to say that say for a couple more years before antitrust jumps in. another one to keep an eye on. Really good comprehensive coverage, Bill. Anybody have anything else they noticed this week?
T-Mobile and Sprint has been called off.
Well, it's called off. Turn off your speaker. Turn off my thanks. It was called off, but then this evening it's back on again. So Sprint is now aggressive. I think it was called off because Sprint believed T-Mobile was going to have too much control. And I just caught wind from the Kansas City business news this evening that it looked like Sprint is now sort of going after T-Mobile to try to shift the balance of power. So we'll see. They've been back and forth so many times. This is getting costly. They've done this a lot, but yeah, just probably 20 minutes before we start, or I think while you guys were working on your exam, I saw something come through that Sprint is now pursuing T-Mobile. We'll see. It could change again by morning. Anything else? Okay, we're not going to get too far, but we are going to work through this one example. While you were taking the test, I sent you the Euroland information. So look at your email. The deliverable is due at noon on our next class day, so noon on Thursday the 9th. I sent you your character description. That's what you're going to do during our simulation. I sent you the description of the project. I also sent you an Excel spreadsheet with the numbers that are on the Euroland project so that you'll have a chance to, if you wanted to do any manipulation, you can do it easily in a spreadsheet without having to build a spreadsheet. The case is available online. The link is on our syllabus, so you need a copy of the case. It's a fun assignment. Most people really enjoy the simulation, and so don't tell anybody who you're representing. I've split you up into a couple of teams, and then you're going to try to come up with the best mix of projects that the company should do going forward. And financial numbers are important, but strategy is important too. And so when we talk in class, we say, well, you never want to go forward with the project with a negative net present value. That's the financial theory. The reality, companies do that sometimes. If you have logical justification for why we need this project because it's paired well with another one, or it might position us well in the future, or it might block a competitor. So there's oftentimes that one project numerically looks great and another project looks less great, but you go with the less great project because strategically it makes sense. So when you do your couple page paper, make sure you think about strategy as well as financial numbers. I hate when people get so committed to the numbers that they can't see past which one has the highest net present value. So if you have any trouble interpreting any of the numbers in the spreadsheet that comes with the case, just let me know, and I'm happy to define any terms or walk you through that. I think you'll be fine. I think you have more than enough NPV and IRR to do pretty well with that. I will grade your case. I will grade your quizzes probably tonight, but I won't send them back to you until after the Tuesday class takes their quiz. So I'll probably send it back to you Tuesday, or probably while they're taking their quiz. I'll sit there and send you your graded quizzes. Don't freak out at this point. There's lots of flexibility, and gosh, if everybody did poorly, there's a tremendously good curve. But based on the questions I was getting from you all, I'm not expecting everybody to have done poorly. So relax. Okay, this problem that I'm going to work through. 34? Yeah, we're going to get through it. This problem I'm going to work through is comprehensive, and it's a little bit more complex. And I'm doing that intentionally so that you'll see a complex one, so that when we work on some of the others, they're a little bit easier. So we're going to work through Baldwin, and it is in your book on page 174. And so all of the background on how they came up with these numbers is in your book. And so you should be able to track through. This is why I said it was really important you read this chapter. Okay, so what we want to do is figure out is whether or not they should start selling these bowling balls. And in order to do so, they're going to have to they're going to buy a piece of machinery and use some factory space and build up their working capital and project sales. So what we want to do is figure out, what do those numbers look like? What are those cash flow numbers? This chapter is getting at those cash flow numbers. And we talked last time about sunk costs and erosion and how some projects can have positive or negative side effects on other projects. Well, this now is a project where we're going to look at exactly those kinds of impacts. First thing that happens is Baldwin Company did some test marketing. They spent that money of $250,000. Do you think that $250 is going to be part of the initial outlay for this project? Atia, what do you think? Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, I'm not sure. I didn't read the chapter. I was reviewing for the test, so I'm really not sure.
Okay. Mike, what do you think? Tim, what do you think?
I think it's probably a sunk cost.
Yeah, this money's been spent. They ran a test market. The company's got to pay the bill, but it's not going to be part of the cost here. It's sunk. They have to pay it regardless of whether or not they go forward with the bowling alley, the bowling ball machine. So it's a sunk cost. Okay, they have a factory site. They have some land that they own, and it's valued at 150,000. They already own this land. Is that going to be part of the value of this project? Ellie, what do you think?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. So they already own the land. Yes, because they could use the land for something else. There's opportunity cost here, right?
Absolutely. That 150,000 is going to be relevant. And not only that 150,000, they're also going to have some salvage value at the end for that piece of land. And let me see what it is. Trying not to flip forward with the. Okay. Oh, at the end of the life of the project, they can sell it for 150,000. So we'll have to keep that in mind. They're going to buy this bowling ball machine, and it was cost $100,000. It's going to be depreciated over the accelerated depreciation schedule for 5 years, and we will have to look and see what this accelerated schedule is. In order to start this project, they have to increase their working capital by $10,000 initially. So that means before they can start producing bowling balls, they've got to buy silicone, whatever bowling balls are made out of. So they've got to buy that. They have to extend credit. They have to whatever materials they have to buy the drill bits to drill the holes in the bowling balls. So they have a lot of working capital they're going to need up front. They're expecting that they're going to be able to sell bowling balls for 5 years, and they're going to sell 5,000 in the first year, 8,000 in the second, then 12, then 10, and then 6. So it really is a project that's going to ramp up and then slow down over the course of the 5 years. So that's our starting point. The bowling balls that they sell, the first year they're going to be able to sell them for $20 each. I'm assuming that's a wholesale price. So they sell them for $20, but each year from there on out, they're going to increase in price by 2%. The production costs are going to be $10 per unit, and that's going to increase by 10% per year. Inflation rate's 5%, and then working capital, it starts out at 10,000, and then from there on out, it's going to be 10% of sales each year. All right, a lot of information. That's often the way these problems start. This is the way the real world happens. You have a lot of content right up front. Okay, so the bowling ball machine is going to cost $100,000 initially. And it's going to cost $100,000 initially. We're going to depreciate it over time, and then there's going to be some salvage value. We'll talk more about that salvage value and how we came up with that number in a minute. We have the schedule, the accelerated depreciation schedule says that we're going to depreciate the bowling ball machine at 20% the first year, 32%, 32% the next year, like 19% the third year. So by the 5th year, we'll have depreciated the asset down to $94.24. So it's almost fully depreciated, but not entirely. So altogether, we have left $5.76 is the value of the bowling ball machine on the books. We think we can get somebody to buy that machine from us for $30,000. And we'll see in a minute how we came up with that 2176 up there. The opportunity cost for the warehouse, as Ellie noted, we're going to give up selling that warehouse for $150,000 today. But in the last year of our project, once we stop selling bowling balls, we then can sell it for $150,000. So it was a use to the project right now, but it's going to be a source in the 5th year. We're going to be able to recover that money in the 5th year. Our working capital, we'll get to in a minute, starts out as we need to build up working capital at first, and then we need to increase our working capital based on our sales, and we'll get to those numbers in a second. Yeah, Ellie?
So I had a quick question. So would the opportunity cost for the warehouse be the same 150 in year 5, or would we assume some kind of increase or decrease at that point?
That's a great question. We're trying to make this simple right here. So we're assuming that the market value is going to be the same in year 5. It may be less because there's a whole lot of building going on nearby and there's less demand for this warehouse. Or it could be that real estate typically goes up. It could be worth a whole lot more. You have to make that assumption on how much it's going to be worth to you in the 5th year. Oftentimes, companies, because they're really not sure what's the economy going to be like in 5 years, it's not unusual to presume whatever the market value is today, that's the same market value in year 5, unless they have evidence that they anticipate it's going to be worth a lot less. These analyses should be, if they're done well, they should be done conservatively. So if you believe it's only going to be worth $100,000 5 years from now, you'd use a $100,000 recovery in year 5. But typically real estate increases in value. So if you assume the market value today is the market value in year 5, that's ordinarily a pretty conservative assumption. Okay, the only thing that we have to know from this page is this 260,000. Oops. So when I start, I have to spend $100,000 to buy the bowling machine. I have $150,000 opportunity cost for the land, and I have to spend $10,000 in net working capital. So altogether, my initial outlay is going to be a negative $260,000. So if you think about our cash flows we've been looking at initially, we've got a negative $650,000, negative $260,000, and then we have to figure out what all the positive cash flows are in future years and whether or not this is a good investment. Okay, so this slide just says what we did. We spent $150,000 initially, and we're going to cover $150,000. We're going to recover the $150,000 in year 5. So we spend, it's a use today, it's going to be a source in year 5. It's conservative typically to assume that we're going to recover just $150,000. If you have overwhelming evidence that you're going to recover more than that, then use a higher number. Okay, our sales revenue. Remember we said that we're going to sell 5,000 units in the first year at $20 per unit. So 5,000 at $20 per unit is equal to 100,000. That $20 is going to increase by 2% per year. So in year 2, we're going to sell 8,000 units at $20 times 1.02 to get to the 163.20. You should go through and make sure you understand where all of these numbers come from. In year 3, we're selling 12,000 units at $20 times 1.02 times 1.02. So the price keeps increasing. So that's how we're getting our sales revenue numbers. And these are projections. So if somebody brings you a cash flow analysis, you want to question them. Do we really think we're going to sell 12,000 units in year 3? And why such a big drop off in year 5? And those are the legitimate questions to ask. And can we really continue to increase the price even as our demand is falling in year 5? So those are exactly the right questions to ask. But this is what they've told us. They brought it to us and said, these are the units we're going to sell and at these prices. Next, we know that costs were going to be $10 per unit, and the costs were going to increase at 10%. So while the revenues are growing at 2%, costs are growing by 10%. So our margins are getting squeezed in later years. So in the first year, we were going to sell 5,000 units, and we're selling at a price. We're selling 5,000 units, and $10 per unit is our operating cost. So that's where we came up with this 50. And my circles are tough tonight. In year 2, we're selling 8,000 units at a price of $11, $10 times a 10% increase. So that's where we get the 88. Again, you should check all of these figures to make sure you're comfortable with where those numbers came from. Okay, so our depreciation schedule, you are not supposed to know this. Somebody's going to have to give you these numbers. So how do we come up with depreciation on our assets when it's accelerated? We have to have a modified accelerated cash recovery system schedule. And so as we can see, our unit started at 100,000 in the first year. That's how much we paid for the unit. It's going to be depreciated by 20% or $20,000. In year 2, it's going to be depreciated at 32%. And it's 32% of the original price, not 32% of the remaining value of the asset. So 32% of 100 is 32,000. So this schedule tells us our depreciation for these 5 years. And we can see at the 6th year, there's still 5.76% left of value for this asset, or $57,600, and yet we're going to be selling it for $30,000, and we'll see why that's relevant in a minute. And how do I know we're selling it for $30,000? When you read in the chapter, they tell you you're selling it for $30,000. So we've been able, now we have everything we need to set up our pro forma income statement. We know our sales, we know our operating costs, we know our depreciation. That brings us to our income before taxes, EBT. We're ignoring interest expense at this point. We take interest expense into consideration elsewhere. The book tells us the tax rate is 34%. They'd have to tell you that, which gets you to taxes here, and that gets us down to a net income. Now, what do we need to do after we have a net income number? What's next? Chelsea, good point. Ordinarily, what we do with that net income is we decide what we're paying in dividends and what we're going to retain. That's exactly what we typically do, except when we're doing capital budgeting. When we're doing capital budgeting, what we do with that money isn't important. That's not part of operations. That's part of our financing decisions. So we would look at that elsewhere. Good point, but we're going to look at that elsewhere. How do we get from net income to a cash flow kind of number? Ready? How do we get from net income from cash flow? The formula I told you would know in your sleep. Not been sleeping much lately. Where this looks so scary. Good for you. You're going to get to stop early. That formula that we use is operating cash flow equals EBIT plus depreciation minus taxes. We haven't had to use it much yet. We looked at it once in an earlier chapter. It's going to get us to that NPV number in a little bit. Oh, boy, Atia, you were awfully close. EBIT plus depreciation minus taxes. So we create a pro forma income statement, and then we convert that to an operating cash flow. So EBIT, in this case, because we're ignoring interest, it's the same as, EBIT is the same as EBT, so it's 30 plus depreciation of 20 minus taxes of 10.9. Okay, and I'm going to see that here. We simplified. I have great news for you. We're going to stop there because I went through and I created some extra slides to show you how we did some additional things, and those are not the slides that I have pulled up here. We're already long, and I know you guys are tired from the quiz. So we're going to stop there, and I expect for class on Monday that you are, or not on Monday, on Thursday, that you know how to do everything through step 4. So you know how you have gone back through and you made sure you understood where the sales numbers come from, where the operating costs, how we got those depreciation and tax numbers, and how we get to operating cash flow. Okay. You also should know where this negative 260 came from. If you can get that far, I can get you through this other stuff. We'll do the other stuff, this cash flow from investments. We'll take care of those in class, and we'll go into a little bit more depth. But everything up to this point you should be able to do. We'll go over a couple of problems in class next time, and we're going to be busy next time because we've got Euroland will be the first. It's about an hour. Then we'll do our review of the week, and then we'll finish up chapter 6. I think I told you in Euroland to get ready for chapter 8. There's no way. So we'll just finish up chapter 6 after Euroland next week. We are in person in class next time. And Micah, you did not get any information about Euroland tonight. You're going to get it on Tuesday night with the Tuesday class. So if you don't see anything from me by 9 p.m. Tuesday night, I forgot, which I don't think I will. I saved your email, so I would remember. But know that you should get something from me Tuesday night. And if you don't, send me a reminder, okay? Everybody else, you've got your Euroland stuff. And we'll finish up chapter 6. Please, if you haven't had a chance to read it, and I understand, if you haven't read it yet, please go through and look at this Baldwin example and work on following it through because this is really, really important. Okay. All right. Any questions? Have a great evening, good weekend, and I'll see you next Thursday. Bye, guys.
Thanks.